Hello, and welcome to the 18th BrettCast episode, the sort of podcast where I take my individual segments and smash them into one longer form video that releases a few times a month. First up is going to be movie and TV talk, where I'm going to discuss and give my thoughts on the movie Blue Beetle. Next is going to be What's New With, where I'll be focusing mostly on Studio Series stuff, but also a little bit of Legacy United, and some Transformers Reactivate figures. After that, it's going to be a double shot of gaming talk. I am first going to discuss and give my thoughts on the game Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, and after that, I'm going to be discussing and giving my thoughts on the game Endzone, A World Apart. With that, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Movie and TV Talk segment. In this segment, I'm going to be discussing and giving my thoughts on the latest DC movie, Blue Beetle. Remember, there will be spoilers, so let's get into this. I'm going to say right off the start that the movie reminded me of both the first Iron Man movie and Ant-Man movie. So, we have Jamie Reyes, who just graduated college and returned home to celebrate with his family, only to find that the family ain't doing so well. Jamie, or whatever his name, I don't know how you say his name, he has these grand plans to become rich and whatnot, but does these basic jobs of working for one of the richest and well-known families in the area, the Cords. Jamie witnesses an argument between Jenny and Victoria Cord, which leads to himself and his sister getting fired, but on their way out, Jenny offers Jamie a job if he'll come by the Cord Industries building the following day. When he shows up, he ends up getting handed a box and told not to open it, but when he takes the box back home, his family pressures him into opening it. What Jamie ends up having is something called the Scarab, which attaches itself to Jamie and turns him into Blue Beetle. There's some stuff with the suit testing itself, which is all funny and whatnot. The point is that the Scarab is very important to Victoria Cord because it's the backbone of the tech she's developing called the OMAC. The other villain of the movie, Carapax, is one test subject that Victoria has. They eventually learn that Jamie has it, and so they lure Jamie out by going after his family, and an action scene occurs where Jamie incapacitates the enemies, but while trying to get away, his dad has a heart attack and dies. This puts the Reyes family onto revenge mode, so Jenny takes them to Cord Estate, where her own dad built all this tech, because at one point he was Blue Beetle, but not in the way that Jamie is, because the Scarab wouldn't bind itself with her dad, so he just studied it and made tech based on it. Jamie also gets kidnapped in the action scene I mentioned, and Victoria hooks him up to a machine that takes the Scarab's code and transfers it to Carapax's OMAC. There's the big final action scene where Jamie almost kills Carapax, but then we see his tragic backstory, so Jamie spares him, and Carapax takes it upon himself to kill Victoria by overloading his suit's energy reactor, and that's the basis of what happens in the movie. So what did I think of Blue Beetle? Well, I'd say it's not terrible, but I've seen a lot better. There are some parts that I was questioning why things even happened. For example, when the family and Jenny go to the Blue Beetle ship, the sister decides to spray paint something on it, and I felt like it was super pointless to have that happen, because at no point in the movie after that did they actually focus enough on what was spray painted on the ship, so I didn't really see why it was necessary and couldn't read what the hell it even was. Something I do find a little curious is that the Scarab can form anything that the host wants, and we see that in some of the action scenes in the movie. What's curious is that why, if the Scarab can make anything the host wants, why does it have this sort of default suit look? Can the suit be remade if the host thinks the base suit is incredibly boring? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love how the suit looks, but it could be better, it could be more armored, whatever. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of the character of Rudy because he felt way too plot convenient of a character. Like when Jamie and Jenny were planning on breaking into the Cord Industries building, Rudy just happens to have a jamming device for this one specific situation. Like, what was the original purpose of building it? What purpose would your average person have with a jamming device? Yeah, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Then when they go to Cord Estate and they find Jenny's dad's lair of Blue Beetle stuff, and Rudy just jumps on the computer and is able to easily understand and interpret all of the research and stuff that Jenny's dad had on the Scarab. I don't know, it just feels odd that he just understands these things. It felt way too convenient for a lot of plot to happen, honestly. How and why was he able to fly the Beetle ship, for that matter? No point in the movie had we ever known that Rudy had some sort of flight experience. The only thing that the movie really sets him up in the beginning to be is just like the guy who's afraid of the government. So it just felt really strange. I did really like how the Blue Beetle suit looks, especially over Carapax's final suit. I mean, the final Carapax suit was pretty cool looking, but it's a bit bulky. I mean, the shoulder pads are so big. Again, that suit also had the same ability to be what it wants to be, basically, based on the host from the Scarab. So, like, why make such a large and bulky suit and not something slimmer yet equally as protective? I will say, though, that what I think is a huge problem with the Scarab suit is that every single time Jamie wants to use it, it burns the clothes he's wearing, and that seems like a pretty huge flaw. Like, I suppose the suit is meant to be skin tight and all that, but that is a lot of clothes for Jamie to literally burn through every single time he uses the Blue Beetle suit. It's not like he's just going to stand around naked in case he needs to use the Scarab. I just think it's a pretty big flaw, if you ask me. Overall, the action was decent, the comedy was decent, and really everything about the movie was just pretty alright. Blue Beetle is a good and enjoyable movie. And that's going to bring the movie and TV talk segment to a close. Hello, and welcome to the What's New With segment. In this segment, I'm going to be talking about upcoming studio series Transformers, for the most part, with a small amount of Legacy Evolution and Transformers Reactivate stuff on the side. So let's get into it. Starting with the core class studio series stuff, we have Mohawk from The Last Night. This one is just whatever. Mohawk had such a small and, in my opinion, not all that important role in The Last Night, so I don't really care that much about the character. I guess I'm glad Mohawk is getting a figure for those who care about having a complete Last Night collection within Studio Series, but other than that, it's whatever. Next up is the concept art Decepticon Rumble from the Bumblebee movie. I don't really like this one. The legs are so small, and like they really don't have much in the way of feet, just tiny stubs. Do they even have hands under the pile drivers? The shade of blue is nice, but that's about the only positive thing I can say about this one. I just don't like it. Next up is the Deluxe Class Wheeljack from Rise of the Beasts. I actually really like how this one looks. A very good looking robot mode and vehicle mode. Only thing I find a little bit odd is how the torso looks very thin, and like there's not a whole lot behind the torso, but it's hard to tell from the angle of the picture if that's the case, but I still want it. After that is the Deluxe Class Scorpionok from Rise of the Beasts. This one is quite the easy one to pass on for me, as it just looks like a strange mess of a thing. I like the colors, and that's about the only aspect of the figure I do like. I definitely am not going to be getting that one. From there is the Studio Series 86 Voyager class Junkie on the Scrap Heap. Gonna be honest, this figure does nothing for me at all because I've had zero interest in any of the Junkions and do not care about them at all. It is something that exists and is there for those that really want to further their Junkion collection, but that's not me, so I'm gonna skip that one. Next up is the Studio Series Gamer Edition Voyager class Starscream. I'm sorry, but what the heck did they do to Starscream here? What are those arms? They are way too long and thin, and like the joint is way too long and thin, which doesn't help the arms either. The rest of it looks decent, but those arms just absolutely ruin this figure for me. The jet mode is fine, plus the null ray accessory just looks way too big compared to how it looks in the game, and there's only one. Why not two? And why is it not attached to the arm a little better? At least I myself still have the original Hasbro release of the War for Cybertron Fall of Cybertron Starscream, because this one just doesn't do it for me, and I'm disappointed in that. Compared to the previous Gamer Edition stuff has been pretty good, but not a Starscream. I'm going to be skipping that boy. After that is the Leader Class Concept Art Megatron from the Bumblebee movie. Oh my gosh, I love this and I want it so much as well. I think this is supposed to be a triple changer, so it's a little odd to me they only show the figure in tank and robot mode and not whatever the other mode is going to be, but that's fine. This figure is supposed to be all about the robot mode anyway. Dang, that's a cool robot mode. The tank mode reminds me a little bit of Megatron's tank mode from Revenge of the Fallen, and that may be intentional on the designer's part, but I'm not certain about that. I'm only certain that I really like this and I'm going to try to get one. After that is the Legacy United Commander Class Beast Wars Universe Magmatron. I'm still not that into Beast Wars that much, and yeah, this one looks super strange to me and I don't really like it. The colors are a weird combination. Really everything is just a weird combination of things on this, which leads to I don't really like it. I don't also see this being worth $90 to $100 as the Commander class figures fetch nowadays. At the very least, it's not a glorified Voyager class with a trailer, but I still don't like it, and I don't think it's going to be worth the price, and I'm going to be skipping it. Even if I did like it, I can't afford Commander classes anyway. Next up is the first of what we have for upcoming Transformers Reactivate video game figures in the form of a 2-pack featuring Optimus Prime and Soundwave. Prime looks fantastic, which doesn't surprise me as it's really not that hard to mess up Prime, but not impossible. Good robot mode, good truck mode, and you get both the typical Prime accessories, the axe and the gun. And I'm so glad they didn't include a trailer and hike the price up on this guy. Soundwave, though, I don't know what to think. The vehicle mode is decent, but it's a little odd seeing Soundwave as like an armored SUV thing. The robot mode, though, just seems very strange in terms of proportions. Like, Soundwave has really long legs, but very short arms, and the head is just kind of... I don't even know what to say. I don't know what size they're supposed to be, but they look like Voyager class to me, but that's just a guess. Finally, the other Transformers Reactivate 2-pack here, featuring Bumblebee and Starscream. I really like this Bumblebee because it's very different from what we usually get for Bumblebee figures. I really like armored dune buggy looking vehicle mode, and the robot mode looks great too. I do wish that there were better weapons than just a tiny pistol, but I don't know. Starscream looks fantastic. The jet mode looks so slick and cool, very much like an F-15 or something, I guess. I don't really know my military jets. The robot mode looks fantastic too, and I really like how they did the machine guns on the arms. Just looks so cool. Again, I feel like these are Voyager class size figures, but I really don't have any idea here. I have to say though, out of all these, the most I'm looking forward to is the concept art Megatron from the Bumblebee movie, and both of the Reactivate 2-packs. But that is going to bring the What's New With segment to a close. Hello, and welcome to the first part of the Gaming Talk segment. In this part, I am going to be discussing and giving my thoughts on Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands. Now, before I really get into it, I want to point out that at this time, I have about 61 hours in this game, and I have not fully finished the campaign. So I probably will not go into specific story details because the game is huge. And also because I think it's better that the player discovers the story by playing the game for themselves. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Wildlands is like the 10th Ghost Recon game in this long and strung out franchise. I say that, but I guess I'm not all that surprised since Ubisoft has a habit of running their franchises into the ground. Looking at you, Far Cry and Assassin's Creed. That being said, this is only my second Ghost Recon game, the first being Future Soldier, which is a pretty solid game, but a very, very different game from Wildlands. Of course, the biggest difference is that Future Soldier is a linear single-player game, while Wildlands is an open world, and you can have co-op and all that crap, but somehow doesn't have towers that you have to climb since it's an Ubisoft game. Instead, however, of making jokes that Wildlands is an Ubisoft game, I'm going to get into the stuff about the game. This game is big, and I'm not saying that just because it's an open world game. No, it is very much a big open world. The game takes place in Bolivia, somewhere I've never been, so I have no idea what it is like, and couldn't tell you if what's in the game is accurate to what the actual place is like. But it doesn't matter. The main villain of the game is this guy named Rodrigo Morales, aka El Sueño, I think, who is supposed to be a big drug lord dude. What's interesting with Wildlands is the way that you go about going after this guy. When you open the map in the game, you see like a chain of people, and it all connects to Rodrigo. So the way you go after this guy is by like disrupting suppliers and shippers, because he's a drug guy. Each person is in a specific area of the map and usually has like 3 to 5 story missions associated with them. You do those missions, and then you get a mission in which you go after the person in that area, and you either bring them in to be interrogated, or sometimes you just kill them, whatever, and you get more information on Rodrigo. You don't even see or hear from Rodrigo at all throughout the campaign. And that's something I really appreciate over the likes of, say, Far Cry 3 or 4, where the villain is constantly reminding you that the big bad is still there because I guess they assume you forgot or something. Anyway, like I said, still working my way through the campaign towards Rodrigo, and he's not shown up yet, so I'm really just guessing that he doesn't make an appearance until you go after him directly. What else does Wildlands have to offer when one isn't doing story missions? Well, there's an almost overwhelming amount of side crap to do that it borders on kind of being ridiculous in my opinion. So there's like this minor bad guy group in the game called the Santa Blanca, and they're represented by orange areas on the mini-map when you're walking, driving, or flying around. There's also the next, or the highest I guess you could say, up bad guy group called the Unidad. And they're represented by purple areas on the mini-map when you're walking, driving, or flying around. On top of that, you have your rebel forces, which are represented by green, and you have yourself and your 4-person squad, which are trying to help the rebels out, taking down both Santa Blanca and Unidad. There will be areas on the map that will look like a lowercase I, which usually means there's intel caches, or a bad guy lieutenant you can interrogate for intel. When you do either, you can unlock 3 to 4 things. One will be skill points, another will be medals. The third are weapon containers or weapon parts. Well, technically both. And the fourth will be rebel ops. And then the final will be supply raids. Skill points, medals, and the weapon containers / weapon part boxes are identified with a blue color, and the rebel ops and supply raids are identified with a green color. Now, supply raids have a few different forms. You'll have something like steal a helicopter or plane that could have fuel or food, or sometimes you have to stop a convoy that contains fuel or food. The rebel ops, though, they have a few different forms as well. We have diversions, in which you go to an antenna, turn it on or turn it off, then have to get to a second antenna that could be pretty close or pretty far. And oh yeah, you're also being timed by a countdown timer, so you gotta be efficient in these. There's guns for hire, where you go to a Santa Blanca held spot and you have to locate and interrogate a Sicario leader. Pretty simple in concept, but not exactly the easiest to carry out, but are not the hardest either. There are mortar strikes, where you find a radio thing and you turn it on and you defend it until a rebel message fully broadcasts for a specific amount of time. These can be challenging because if the radio takes too much damage, you can fail the mission. There's the recon ones that just require you to find unclaimed supply drops. These can be tricky because the locations often require one to climb, or take a helicopter, or parachute from a helicopter, which makes these ones a little bit annoying to do, but they're not all that bad. Lastly is vehicle drop-off, where you breach a building, take out the bad guys, and locate and hack a computer all before the time runs out. Yep, that's what you can do when you're not doing story missions, and it keeps one pretty busy because there's a lot of these side activities all over the map. There are some of these side activities that I choose not to do for a very specific reason that I will soon get into, but I want to say first that one aspect of the game I don't enjoy is driving cars or dirt bikes. Of the two, dirt bikes handle worse, but overall the driving in this game is terrible, and I don't want to linger on it because like 99% of people on the Wildlands forums pretty much agree that the driving is terrible. The only thing that I can think of that is worse is flying a plane. I can't tell you how many times I've stolen a plane, takeoff goes smoothly, but landing just results in the plane exploding and my character exploding with it. I don't get how flying a helicopter or a drone is so much easier than something like driving a car or flying a plane, but that is the way of Wildlands. The one thing that I truly hate about Wildlands is the Unidad. They work the way like how chases in GTA are. Like, you know, GTA's chases have like the star system, right? And with Wildlands, it's like an arrows in like the top right hand corner of the screen. And there's only 4 of them in Wildlands versus, you know, GTA chases go up to 5. Anyway, Unidad is extremely annoying because they can seriously make a mission go from smooth to a complete and utter mess very quickly. The more Unidad guys you kill, the more escalated that your like the meter in the screen becomes, right? So that means the more you kill, the faster the arrows go up, and at that point you're effectively screwed. At the 1 to 3 arrows, you can get Unidad to leave you alone pretty good if you just get in a vehicle and drive, or just hop in a helicopter and fly away. And I say that because using a vehicle is the easiest way, but sometimes you can do it on foot. Just takes a little bit longer. However, if you get 4, it's not impossible to get away, but like that's when they're sending like 2 Apache's helicopters after you. It is very difficult to get away, and those helicopters make it hard to get away in a helicopter because they'll just frickin' missile you down, and that's the end of it. And this is why I really hate when like there's a metal or weapon case that is located in a Unidad base because of exactly what I just said. Last thing that I don't really personally like is the tier 1 mode. It is completely optional, but I had it on for a while and I don't like it. Basically, you gain XP for everything you do, and that XP levels you up in this mode. And as you do, not only do you unlock things, but certain difficulties will become unavailable for you unless you turn off tier 1 mode. Like, I hit level 46, and the game bumped me from arcade difficulty to regular, and things were just too hard for me. So I turned off tier 1 mode. I'm glad it's there for people who like a game that progressively gets more challenging, but it's not the mode for me. There are some small things that I like being able to attach and detach a suppressor to any of your guns. I also like the gunsmith. It's nice. There's plenty of weapons. There's plenty of ways to modify them. Now, I think that Wildlands doesn't really do the idea of being able to approach an encounter in any way you want all that well. I say this because I find that unless you want to rely upon your teammates reviving you, which they can only do once per engagement, or you want to die a lot, I find that taking out as many bad guys with a suppressed sniper is the best way to go, and having a suppressed assault rifle and handgun, just in case things get a little messy, works the best. I really do not recommend, picking your loadout as like an LMG and a shotgun, especially with Unidad encounters, but you do what you want. I'm just saying I wouldn't advise it. I also like the small things in encounters too, like being able to shoot an alarm tower before the bad guys can use it, or shutting off generator before they know that you're there, and also liberating imprisoned rebels too is a nice touch. There is something related to missions, I forgot about this earlier, that is a little odd to me, because not only do you have all of your story missions in the game, but there's these extra missions. For example, you can go to a spot in the game and you can get a mission from Scott Mitchell, the guy from the Advanced Warfighter and Future Soldier games. Or you can go to another area and get a mission from Sam Fisher from the Splinter Cell games. Which, speaking on that note, I was like in the vicinity of that mission, because and I haven't gotten it yet, but there's like a weapon case in the vicinity of Sam Fisher's mission. I cannot get to it, because to get in there to Sam Fisher's mission spot, it's very specific instructions of don't get seen and don't kill anyone. And I think it's ridiculous that if I'm trying to do one thing in the vicinity of that mission and I kill someone, it should not affect that mission because I haven't started it. But that's what happened. I tried to go after that weapon case. I killed someone. It's like, you failed because you killed someone. And I'm like, I wasn't even trying to do the mission though. I was just trying to get the weapon case and get out. But anyway. And the other one I've noticed is there's a mission marked by, it's like a 6, which I'm assuming is Rainbow Six. I don't know, but I think it's kind of odd for a Ghost Recon game like this to have, I get having Scott in the game, like Scott Mitchell. That's fine, because he's from Ghost Recon. But having Splinter Cell guy and Rainbow Six stuff in there, like, that just seems a little bit strange to me. Overall, Wildlands is a pretty decent game. The open world is big. There are plenty of story missions to do. Almost too many side activities to keep one busy. The weapons feel great. The gunsmith is nice too. Of course, the driving of cars and flying planes is terrible. Unidad are super annoying and make things a lot more frustrating than they need to be. And Tier 1 mode makes things a little just too hard for me, and so I choose not to use it. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands is an average and enjoyable game. And now, to the next part. Hello, and welcome to the second part of the Gaming Talk segment. In this segment, I'm going to be discussing and giving my thoughts on the game Endzone, A World Apart. Let's get into it. So yeah, this is probably a bit of an odd one for me to even consider trying, because at the end of the day, this game is a city builder, and I've never been into city builders really. I've tried other city builder games like Anno 1404 and Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, and I found both of those games to be pretty boring, which is why I stopped playing both of those games. I wouldn't say that I had my hopes up going into Endzone, because I've learned with movies and games, and a lot of media honestly, that I feel like one should never get their hopes up lest they get completely decimated by the final product. All that said, I wanted Endzone to be different from those other city builders that I've played. Different in the way of finally being the first city builder game that I actually enjoy and want to keep playing. To my surprise, Endzone did actually achieve this, sort of. Well, I'll get into the big reason why I refunded this game a little bit later, but yes, I was actually able to enjoy myself when I was playing this game, and that's great for me when it comes to a city builder game. The really nice and relaxing soundtrack also helps, so much so that I actually downloaded and I listened to Endzone's soundtrack outside of the game itself. The game is post-apocalyptic, and like the dropping off point in the game where the gameplay begins is like Earth is this wasteland and people live underground in places called end zones. People have been underground for so long that it's getting safer on the surface for people to come out, and so they do, and that's kind of where the game begins. I know it's not a perfect explanation, but it's what I got from the opening cutscene. The game has a terrific tutorial, which is not something I usually mention in any game when I talk about it. I found the tutorial to be extremely helpful, and was the first thing that I did instead of just jumping into a survival mode game blind and not knowing what the heck I'm doing. Once done with the tutorial, I went into an easy difficulty survival mode, and yeah, this is, where you build your settlement, try to get more settlers in, defend your settlement. It's a city builder. That's what you do, right? Admittedly, I struggled on my first settlement, so much so that I was getting extremely confused and quite upset because I didn't know what I was doing wrong. For example, my settlers asked for protective clothing, and I told my tailor, make protective clothing. But they weren't, and I didn't understand why. And it turns out because I didn't have the production limit cap on protective clothing set to a high enough point, that they were just kind of sitting there because they're like, hey, we've made enough, we're at the limit, we can't make any more. So, once I realized that, I went and I started a new easy difficulty game. I mean, I did take some time off from the game before doing that, but I did eventually start a new one, and things went so much better, despite the fact that I was not able to further that one because of issues I'm going to get into very soon. The game also has random weather events that can and will roll through a settlement, and even raiders too. I didn't deal with raiders because I was on easy, but I've seen videos of it happening, and it's a nice touch, honestly. The gameplay is really fun, and I just wish that the issues I encountered had not been so massive that I had to get rid of this game. So let's talk about the massive issue right now. And that massive issue is this thing called constant crashing every 10 minutes or so. Now, when I started playing this game, I remember the game crashing within 10 minutes of the first tutorial. I didn't think all that much of it at the time because I got through the second tutorial section, and then when starting the third section, the game crashed again. But I persisted, even with the crashing, I got through the tutorials. But of course, after that, I was like, you know what, I need to take some time away from this game because it was beginning to frustrate me. And when I came back to Endzone, I started a new game, and that seemed to make things better. Well, no, make things worse. I tried for an hour to play the game. And I'm not making this up when I tell you that Endzone would crash every 10 minutes on me. And I thought that constantly saving the game would prevent this, but it didn't. Kept all my graphics settings on low. I had the game on borderless windowed. And that is the most help I could find when Googling how to prevent Endzone from crashing all the time. At most, I just found developers asking players to make a crash log and email it to them. And I'm sorry, I want a solution to this now. Not have to figure out how to take a bunch of information, make a zip file, and send it to them, and then have to wait for them to give me a solution. And I know it's not my PC because my PC can handle anything I throw at it. So yeah, my experience was brought down by the fact that the game is basically unplayable. And I know I say this all the time, but I really did want to like this game. And as I've said, I did have fun playing it when the game was actually able to be played in between the game crashing itself every 10 minutes. And at that point, I hate to say it, but I already did, it makes the game wholly unplayable and really does frustrate me. It frustrates me because I wanted to keep playing, but I couldn't take any more, and so I was able to get a refund despite having about 2 hours of game time. I really don't think I can give this game a proper rating because, well, I think the core gameplay is very well done and enjoyable. And while I think the soundtrack is really nice to listen to inside and outside of the game, but the amount of times the game crashes makes it very unplayable for me. And that makes it hard for me to enjoy the game to its fullest. And I hate having to say that. I really do, but at the end of the day, that was my experience with Endzone. I'm sure people out there have had better experiences. I don't know. Maybe it's something like maybe if I had a better GPU, it could have worked. But I don't know. But that's going to end the Gaming Talk segment. That's also going to do it for the 18th BrettCast episode. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comment section below, and I may even answer a question or discuss a comment in a future episode. If you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.